This is a tutorial for the Roblox Vis Tools where I'm going to run you through the basic features such as the detail tag, software occlusion culling, and the imposter system so that you can make your Roblox experiences run better. So this is a very simple test scene that I have set up that has some free models building from the Roblox default city scene, trees, some rocks, a couple of decals on the road. It's fairly straightforward. The scene's organized fairly nicely where everything's in folders and you can find what you need pretty quickly. I have it set up like this so that I can add tags to things as I go, and I recommend you do the same sort of thing. If your scene's better organized, it'll be much easier to set things up. Alright, so I'll start off just by grabbing all of the small objects in the scene, which is these tables, a few fire hydrants and stuff like that. Grab all these objects, and I'm just going to assume that you have things already installed from the previous video, and I'm going to tag them as detail small. So they're tagged as detail small. That's all of these objects you can see highlighted at the moment. And just to go along with that, I'll grab the rocks and I'll tag them detail small as well. Then we'll jump into the game and see what we have. Jumping in. You can see the world looks pretty much as you expect it to, but as we get over towards the coffee table and the city set, we can see that the smaller objects fade in as we move around. Garbage can fades in, fire hydrant, smaller details, and down here we have a rock, post office box and whatnot. So this is very similar to streaming enabled, but as you can see, it's not doing just a single radius cull on the world. It's doing nice fade ins for objects as you get closer to them, and they're not popping. So for the larger objects like the lampposts, I'm just going to grab those street lamps. I'm going to mark them as detail big. You can see I've got little hints on the icons about what sort of things they should be. So roughly whale sized or tree sized, I guess, would be the detail big objects, or even buildings. Detail small is for things that are about the size of a player or smaller. Shrubs, bushes, small rocks, things like that. Now, okay, so I've done the fire hydrants, and for the heck of it, I will do a detail big on this big building as well. I mean, that's probably not what you want to do for the game, for your game, but I'll do that for an example right now. So you can see the lampposts are still visible all the way down into the distance, but as we start pulling out, you can see, because detail big is set to be quite a far distance away, those lamps in the distance are pulling out, and you don't really notice them because they're very far away. And keep running, the building goes away. That's not so good. We really don't want entire buildings to go away because they're landmarks and players will navigate to them. So that takes us to our next step, which is providing custom level of detail models for things, which is another feature of the detail tags. So we'll grab this building and we'll create a part. We'll size this part to be roughly the size of the building. We'll fit it fairly well, we won't be too crude with this. So, I mean, you don't even have to be very careful with this, to be honest, because at the distance that things are being swapped, a building swapping out for a block is probably totally okay. But what we will do is we'll make sure that the material is correct. So we'll swap it for brick, and we will swap it for the correct color. So I'll click through here, get the correct color, go back to this part, swap it out. So we have a big block that's roughly the right color for this building here. I'm going to anchor it, and I'm going to stick it in the model. And to make it an LOD for this model, we just type in LOD, and that's it. That's the thing set up. So what will happen now is when we drop back into the game, we'll have this building and that brick is not there anymore. But what I'll do is I'll run off to the side down here once we get far enough away, instead of it fading out and going to nothing, it just turns into a block. So it's a pretty good approximation of what should be there. Get closer, all of the details come back, pull out, details, fade out again. You do that for smaller objects as well, very simply. So exactly the same process for, say, this little mailbox. We'll add we'll just do it with a part. You can model these LEDs as well if you really want to, but I found for most of the objects in Roblox that are block-like can probably just be approximated with a couple of parts inside of a mesh. You don't even have to just use a single part. You could like use a couple to make sure that windows and stuff are approximated. That's all in the documentation, so you can see that all there anyhow. So we're going to grab this little box and we're going to color it blue. I think that's kind of close. Yeah, close enough. Going to anchor it. Going to make it an LED. Now, this small mailbox, when we get far enough away from it, will turn into a box. This is good if you want to make sure that landmarks and stuff stay visible as you pull away from them, but without costing you all of the extra geometry. So you can see the mailbox, we'll pull away from it, and then it just turns into a little block in the distance. So at a glance, you can see where the mailbox is, and as you get closer to it, it seamlessly blends into what it's supposed to look like. These decals on the road can have exactly the same treatment done for them. These ones are meshes with surface appearances on them, but actual decals can be tagged as well. So, I mean, I'll mark these as detail small so that they fade out. Maybe not the crosswalks. The crosswalks, we need to see those at a distance because those are landmarks. We'll make those detail big. And we'll grab this decal on the spawn point here and show you something neat with that. The spawn location has a decal on it, and we can tag that directly as being detail small on the decal, which will cause the decal itself to get removed. So everything looks correct up close, and as we pull away, you can see the marks on the road fade out and the decals fade out. You can also do the same thing with surface appearances and texture instances as well. Now onto the software occlusion culling. So what we'll do is we'll grab this whole building and we'll stick it inside of another model, because you can only have one tag from the Roblox Vis system, Vis Tools, on an instance at a time. You're allowed to tag models further down inside of it. So if you wanted to grab a window and make that a detail small and have the whole building be a detail large, that's okay. But each individual instance can only have one tag on it, but you're allowed to nest it. So what we'll do is we'll make this whole building DynamicVis. Well, now what DynamicVis says is I want to remove this entire object if it gets occluded by one of the occluding objects in the scene. So the building is marked as DynamicVis, and we'll grab all of the trees and we'll mark those as DynamicVis as well, saying if these things get visible, blocked in line of sight from the player behind a occluder, they'll get removed. Now this hill, there's another little gameplay area over here that we've got. So what I'll do is I'll grab this part here and I will duplicate it and call it Occluder. And I'll tag it as an occluder and I'll color it bright red so that we know where it is. And the idea for this is that you don't ever want to have any parts of an occluder geometry sticking out into the world. They get removed from visibility when you're running the game, so you can't see this red thing. But what it will do is when you're running the game, is any of the things that you've marked as DynamicVis will be removed when they get hidden behind it. Oh, I forgot to mark this thing as detail big. So it will use its LOD as well. I took the tag off it when I was tagging things. So the building is detail big and will remove itself at detail big range. but it will also be dynamically occluded. Okay, so now we'll go to wireframe and we'll watch the magic happen. So as we run behind this big hill over into this other gameplay area, we can see things that we can no longer see get removed by the software occlusion culling. You can hit F5 and see what's going on there. So you can see that as this red thing starts blocking visibility, those objects get removed from the scene. You don't see any popping, you should never see any of this actually going on because the system's very conservative. It'll make sure that your object stays visible as you're coming out. So you're not seeing any popping or anything there. It's doing a very good job of making sure that if any part of the object is visible, it will be rendered correctly. Alright, and the last thing I want to demonstrate in this video is for the trees. I'm going to turn these off from being DynamicVis, and I'm just going to switch them over to using imposters. Now the imposter system is really straightforward. So what it basically says is for things like trees, as they move into the distance, I want to replace them with a quad with an image of the tree on it instead. This is like a very, very, very common video game technique, and there's tutorials inside of the documentation for how to build those imposter images for Roblox. So this one is already set up. We've already got the beechwood tree var2, which is one of the default Roblox trees, inside of the imposters folder, and the trees have been tagged as imposters. And so when we come into the game now, so we have the trees in the distance, and as we start pulling away from them, they should be replaced with quads. Yeah, you can see it there now. As we get further and further away, they get substituted for quad versions of the trees. Now there's 16 images generated for each tree, so that the geometry angles should line up fairly correctly. And that's our tour of the Roblox Vis Tools.